anything really change inside the White House? MSNBC contributor Jason Johnson is politics editor at The Root, and John Harwood is CNBC editor at large. They join me now. Jason, Donald Trump has he has a reputation that far precedes Steve Bannon.
Right.
So it was Steve Bannon the reason that Donald Trump seemed to truck with racism and xenophobia?
Not really, Joy, because who you hire is a reflection of your values. So you had Steve Bannon, you had Stephen Miller, you had Gorka. Trump was racist enough before he brought Steve Bannon. He didn't need Bannon's help, but what Bannon did provide him with was a cover in media so that Trump could pretend that what he was doing was policy-oriented and political as opposed to just being a venal racist on a regular basis.
Yeah, and John, I want to play, what actually Bannon said at CPAC. This was sort of a thing that Donald Trump didn't have when Bannon joined up. And this is him talking about globalists.
It's not only not going to get better, it's going to get worse every day in the media. And here's why. But by the way, the internal logic makes sense. They're corporatist, globalist media that are adamantly opposed to an economic nationalist agenda like Donald Trump has.
And John, is there a case to be made that the racism piece and the allowing white nationalists to march and saying they're good people, that part might have been inherent in Donald Trump? He didn't need Bannon for it. But that what you just heard is what Bannon brought to the table, the sort of populism, that agenda that Trump may not have had going in.
I don't think so, Joy. I think Donald Trump was talking about bad trade deals for a very long time, all the way back to NAFTA and before NAFTA. So I think Donald Trump, as Jason was indicated, was reaching out for somebody with some of the same sentiments as he had at a time when his campaign was doing badly. You know what Donald Trump does when times are tough is to go ever more fiercely toward his comfort zone, because that's where he's going to get some applause. And I think internally, Bannon reflected that. Externally, these rallies he has reflect that. He wants to be bathed in applause. And the other thing I just wanted to point out, it's not irrelevant in this week when we're talking about white supremacists and neo-Nazis that 90 years ago, Donald Trump's father was arrested at a Klan event in New York. And then some years after that, in the 1970s, a Republican Justice Department sued the Trump company that involved both the father and the son for discriminating against African Americans. So there are some things that are deep within Donald Trump that Steve Bannon had nothing to do with.
Yeah, and Jason, to that very point of needing to get applause and the things that he wants applause for, I want to play you Donald Trump. This is in March 10 of 2016. This is before Steve Bannon came onto the campaign.
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred. We have to get to the bottom of it.
That sentiment didn't come from Steve Bannon.
Right. Look, Bannon is like the emperor and Trump is like Vader, right? He was kind of going to be evil. Right. Yeah, he's Palpatine and Vader. He's like, teach me how to be more racist and how more effectively racist I can be. And that's pretty much what their relationship was. And I think what's dangerous is, look, now that Bannon's on the outside, he can pretend he's got this sort of globalist agenda. He's going to start a media empire. He's going to expose just how dangerous and how close this Trump administration is to white nationalists, to people who want an ethno-national white state, and how dangerous that's going to be for all of us. And the thing is, Trump has no ground to stand on. He can't say, I don't have these beliefs. Right. And so he's going to be in a tremendous amount of trouble, especially now that he's surrounded by people who don't necessarily agree with that belief.
Well, and then that is the question then, John Harwood, for the Republican Party. Because to admit that this is the core base, right, that Donald Trump still has the base, would be to say that that white nationalist base is the base. If Donald Trump loses Steve Bannon, does the bottom drop out of his base?
Not necessarily. And I think the kind of people that we're talking about, you could call them white nationalists. You could call them people who are motivated by racial resentment. That's part of the Republican base. It's not most of the Republican Party, but it's the part that got Donald Trump the nomination and put him over the top in those Rust Belt states. I think the Republican Party, if they're rational and looking to the future, a country that's getting better educated and more diverse with every passing year, it's going to be a majority-minority country within 30 years, they are going to have to separate themselves from the rawest elements of this base, which Bannon speaks to, and figure out a way to develop a different identity. And some of them are talking about doing that, talking about pretending as if the president doesn't even exist and,
Yeah.
and trying to define the Republican Party their own way.
You know, pollster Sean Trend, you know, had this theory, which Donald Trump proved out, that Republicans just max out the white vote, and resentment helps you do that.
Exactly.
And they could win without minority voters. Does Donald Trump prove that they should triple down on that and be afraid to walk away from his base? Or can they still win elections without the Bannonites?
I remember literally sitting in a meeting with Reince Priebus where he was talking about essentially that Trump couldn't do this. They didn't believe that they could win with the white base only. But you can. You can win with white voters only with repression, with voter suppression,
right,
and making sure that those people are turning out to vote on a regular basis. And I think the other thing is this. You know, Bannon, even though he's gone, you still have Republicans in the party who want to push forth those policies. They want to limit immigration. They want to make voting more difficult. I think this is a winning strategy for the Republican Party. Now, again, whether that'll still be a winning strategy in 2020, we don't know. But for now, they have no reason to change.
Right, and it works because they had a charismatic guy at the top of the ticket, Trump, who could pull it off. Jason
Exactly.
Johnson, John Harwood, thank you guys. Have a great weekend. And still to come.